Okay, let's get started. Welcome to this week's webinar on the future of AI in education and training. I'm Lewis Johnson, your host for this webinar series, and I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, Chad Lane, who's a professor in the College of Education at the University of Illinois. Before that, he was a researcher here in Los Angeles at the Institute for Creative Technologies at USC. And a major focus of Chad's work has been on making AI available to learners wherever and whenever they learn, whether they're doing homework or going to a museum or playing a computer game. And today he's going to be talking about making AI available to teachers, providing teachers with AI-based tools that they can use to teach more effectively. So Chad, thanks for speaking with us today. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Cool. Thanks, Lewis. I really appreciate the opportunity. Hi, everybody. Just going to talk a little bit about sort of the overview, and then I'll get into some of the details of how AIED research is helping with educators and teachers around the world. So the first thing is I have this online poll going. So if you can go open a web browser and go to slido.com, they let me pick my own code at this website, so I picked R2D2. So if you enter that, I'm going to be asking everyone a few questions and getting your input on this and trying to make it interactive. So there's actually a question up right now. So if you go there, I'd love it if you gave an answer. The other thing I'd like to say is that this is a pretty high-level talk. I'm going to sample some research projects from around AIED and highlight what their role is in sort of promoting education and helping teachers. This talk kind of stems and builds on the previous ones that Lewis and Karen have given in the series. And then if you look down the schedule, you'll see some other speakers coming from AIED, including my PhD advisor from we were both at the University of Pittsburgh, and neither of us are now, but Kurt VanLehn and some others. So it's an exciting series, really glad to be a part of it. So the other thing is AIED is enormous, so I'm just giving you a little taste of some projects today, some that I really like, but you will find much more out there than what I'm going to cover. So a few words about me, let's see. So the first question, if you looked at Slido, is what's your favorite movie about AI? So I see Ex Machina up there, Matrix is a good one. So if you have any answers to that, that'd be great. So my background is in computer science. In graduate school, I focused on artificial intelligence and intelligent tutoring systems. Since then, Lewis mentioned I was at USC. I've expanded into more sort of educational games, more informal out-of-school learning. So I'm trying to think about how AI and engagement intersect, how to focus those tools on educational outcomes. I have a particular interest in establishing engagement and fostering interest in students for STEM in particular. So I'll talk about that near the end of the talk. There's my contact information if you ever want to reach me. Oh good, Star Wars is a good one too. I see more answers coming up. I would actually now like to ask a little bit about you. So I'm going to change the question on Slido just so I can get a sense of where you're from. So if you could answer this question, let me know if you're from industry, academia, or any of those others. That will help me get to know who's in the audience. Okay. So after I see a few responses on that, I'm actually going to shift to another question. Okay, there's a few. Some academics in the audience. That's cool. Got a teacher. All right. Good. Okay. So I'm going to actually push it to the next question now, and I promise I'll do some presenting here in a minute, but I just want to get some input from you guys. Could you tell me what adjectives best describe your feelings about artificial intelligence? So you'll see a few up there already, but when you hear AI, kind of what does it evoke in you? What sorts of thoughts do you have on it in terms of its role in society and the potential of it? So we see curiosity, fear, excitement, confusion. Art Gracer would say that's a really good place to be. If you're confused, it means you're learning. Intelligent, hope. Good. Good. Those are really, thank you. Those are excellent. I share all of them. I definitely have been around it. So one of the goals of this talk, as Lewis has also hinted in his earlier talks was that, there's a big public debate around AI right now, like we've never seen. It's really become front page news, and a lot of it is due to kind of some statements that are maybe intended to shock. So the late Stephen Hawking commented on AI. Elon Musk also says a lot about it. So you can kind of see those quotes. Not the most positive views on AI. So I kind of call that left side there the Terminator side. I feel like they've been influenced by Hollywood. On the right, you'll see more quotes from actual AI researchers, many of whom have been spending their careers developing AI systems. So I'm a little more on this side. I've never tried to build a completely autonomous system, but tutoring systems, need some AI, and so I'm a little more familiar with it, and I agree with all the scientists at the 100-year AI project that was out of Stanford. Included, I think, over 20 leading AI researchers who work together to think about the future of AI. You can see that they don't see any imminent threat or even a long-term threat, other than it being a piece of technology, which broadly we need to be careful with technology, obviously, but there's no reason to pull AI out of that. That's the view of that report. And then Rodney Brooks is probably the most outspoken of the anti-fear campaigns. Interesting public debate. This is definitely part of it. And I did some hunting for early examples of, what this fear of technology, and I was able to, in education in particular, and I was able to pull up this awesome comic strip from 1965. And so you can see this robot is teaching the class. It's an awesome robot. What really is amusing to this, and those of you who've done natural language processing or work in the learning sciences, you can see over there they say future school children may hear their lessons at twice the rate and understand them better. So what's amusing about that is that a lot of students will actually, when they have a video to watch, will watch it like at 1.2 speed or 1.3 speed to get through it faster. And I think somewhere there's been research on showing how this hinders comprehension. So it didn't quite go the direction that the Sunday comic strip people thought it might. But in any case, so let me kind of, now that we've seen the big public debate, I'd like to share my favorite conception of AI in education, which was summed up really nicely by Justine Cassell at her keynote at the Technology, Mind, and Society conference several months ago, and that's available online. It's a wonderful talk, and she was one of 4 talks from some of the top AI people in the country. And anyway, Justine said, "Why is autonomy considered the holy grail in AI when human beings are so inherently interdependent?" And I love that quote because it absolutely applies to all of the AIED community. You find no papers about how do we make a system that doesn't, interact and support and help people. It's all about that interdependence. And so this idea of replacing teachers is not part of the research agenda. It's simply not. The research agenda is to provide tools, to give access to information and knowledge that wouldn't otherwise be available. Machines are a lot better at pattern matching and dealing with large amounts of data at once that human beings simply can't. So a lot of the work fits into that category of augmenting and extending existing human capabilities. So I'm going to give you some examples of how that works. So here's kind of the what I hope that you take from the talk. I want to kind of give you an idea of the core arguments that behind AIED research. The common theme is really it's to support and enhance learning, and so hopefully these examples I show you will make that clear. We'll talk about some historical examples, some current ones, a little bit about cognition and emotion, and then I'll end with a little bit of the out-of-school work I'm doing with technology that is used outside of school. And then if there's time, I have a slide on the future directions of AIED, which is, of course, always very debatable and interesting, but I'll say a few things about that. Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask you to think about 2 possible systems for a student sitting down to learn algebra. So on the left, I've kind of already worked through that problem. You can see that the student makes a mistake, but continues. And at the end, they submit their answer and get told, hey, that answer is wrong. Try again. So this is actually the pattern of some of the earliest forms of educational technology, which was called computer-aided instruction. So those are called CAI systems, kind of overloading AI there. But so those were the earliest educational technologies, kind of work like that. But one of the problems with it is that it kind of waited until the end to help the student. And it didn't even help that much. It often was just right or wrong, like looking it up in the back of the book. So what I'd like to ask you to do is, so let's take a step on the right here, and this is where a mistake is made. I'd like everyone to go back to Slido, and I just updated the question there. You play the role of tutor here. Go ahead and enter, what would you say to that student if you were sitting next to them and you saw them take that step? What piece of feedback or hint would you give them? And I'll monitor your posts here. And, you know, it's also might be useful for you to think about what's going on in your head as the tutor. What did you see? What are you comparing it against? What do you think that student needs to be told in order to correct the mistake? So I'm sure you're all working. I haven't seen there's a few answers up there. Well, one that's there, someone said, remember to balance the equation. That's a very good tip. So one way to go is to bottom out and to tell them exactly what it is they need to do. So if the student needs to, you know, you would just tell them, flip that minus sign to a plus on the left. Okay, so so that's what a tutor gets to do. They get to be during the problem solving step instead of waiting till the end. Tutors are there at every moment, and that's a critical point to make. So if we would imagine a full tutoring script here, we might see something like the tutor saying, whoops, make sure you flip the sign. It's kind of a mid-level hint. That actually reveals some of the complexity of this. So what is the right thing to say? How often should you provide the help? How long should you wait before you give the help? All of these are very difficult questions. And not all of them have been explored empirically. Many have, not all. And then you can see there, this tutor gave some positive feedback after they corrected the mistake. And then at the end, they did something also that expert tutors do, which is to go back and reflect on the mistake that was made and how to fix it. So that kind of shows you how the richness of getting on the kind of into the details of the student while they're solving problems. And that's really where a lot of learning comes from, is when you're in the weeds there with the student, is the way I like to talk about it. So that's kind of the core argument of AIED. The first one I'd like to share is that when you use AI, it's often based on psychological models. You can actually get into more deeper issues of learning, and you can help them at the point of need. And that's why AI can be more powerful, is it can actually get in there and model the interactions and the problem solving as well. So a little more formal then, we can go to Kurt VanLehn's two-loop model, and there's the reference. This has become a very important paper for the field. So he proposed that tutoring is two loops, and others have came and said, well, there's three. There's an outer loop, a curriculum loop. So it's been very productive model over the last decade or so. But what I'm talking about here is that inner loop. So you'll hear people in the field talk about the inner loop, and that's what that means, is as the student's taking steps, and actually a lot of the steps turn out to be mental steps. They don't even have a representation in the workspace. Some tutoring systems will take those hidden steps and make them concrete even. But so the idea is tutors need to know about that. They need to know about the visible steps and the hidden steps. And I'm sure when Kurt presents, this will be in a couple weeks, this will be part of his presentation. So let me point out that it's not just the inner loop that can be tough to, complicated. It actually expands into the whole thing. So how do you pick the next task or problem to solve? Very rich set of possibilities. And the paper there goes into different strategies for all of this that AI systems are not. I mean, the task list can just be a linear set of problems. So Okay, so then, oh, and then how do you know when someone's finished? That's another interesting question. When have they learned enough? So these are all useful sort of ways to think about designing any educational system, especially those that are tutoring systems that use AI. We may need to ask people to mute. I'm hearing a lot of background noise. So if you're not muted, it might be a good idea. Okay, so why do we focus so much on that inner loop? It's definitely harder. There's a great deal of activity in a learner's mind, a lot of outside factors that impact learning. And so what kind of my point here is, they might walk away from a larger educational experience, such as a lecture or a museum exhibit, as you see on the right, which is work we did when I was at USC. We did that work in Boston to build virtual humans for kids to talk to. But what we want to think about is, that's just their initial exposure to something. And so they might walk away with something called the illusion of knowing, which is a psychological state when people feel confident, but then their knowledge hasn't been tested deeply enough. So they feel like they know, but then they don't. And I've taught a lot of introductory computer science, and it's very common there, where you see a professor or instructor write a program and everyone nods and says, yeah. And then they get into the computer, and I've actually had them tell me, I don't know what to do. I sit down in front of the computer, I don't know what to do. So it's sort of, an interesting thing that, we want to try to prevent. We want to help people understand the complexity right away. And so anyway, that's why we want to think about, helping them where the action is. And I'm a big Simpsons fan, so I think about, try to use it whenever possible. So you can see a bunch of scenarios here where, that in the moment help is very powerful. So, you can see Ralph Wiggum there using a computer spelling program. If you look at the lower right-hand picture of the classroom, each student has a laptop. And so that's actually going to be the context for a couple of the projects I'm going to share with you shortly, where students are each working on a machine, which can then do some individualized help and tracking. So the first kind of most famous example in the field, and it's one of the oldest too, and it's still going strong, is the cognitive tutors from Carnegie Mellon. So I just put a picture up here. There are plenty of talks and content out there if you want to know more about these. I'm just going to say a few things, but really it gives you an advanced homework work area. So you have the problem in the upper left-hand corner. You've got worksheet to do calculations. In the lower right, you see a graph where you can look at data, visualize it. It all depends on the problem you're solving in the in the task domain. So these vary between tutors, but the main idea is here, though, this is where you do your work, and the tutoring system is there to help you get through it. So you can see, I don't think it's showing now, but when you get stuck, you can ask for help, and when you make a mistake, the system will flag it or give you explanation for why something isn't right. And then in the upper right-hand corner, you actually see a representation with those progress bars of where the student is. And the goal then is to get those progress bars to fill. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But just a few general comments about the cognitive tutors. They've been so impactful. What's really interesting is they have always played this homework helper role. That's what they do. There's never been a cognitive tutor meant to sit in front of the class and run. It's not that at all. It's when the student is working independently or even in small groups, it's there to help when the teacher can't be everywhere. That's a very important thing to note, unless we want to totally jack up the education budget across the world in all of our countries and get one teacher for every student. That's not going to happen. So this is sort of the argument for why these intelligent tutors can make a big impact. So when you look across, the cognitive tutors and all of them, you see at least two key ingredients. One is that all the feedback's based on knowledge representation. So they have problem-solving systems modeled inside the tutor that you can match against the student's actions. And then they also have pedagogical models that provide feedback. And all of Lewis's earlier talks, he showed how that works in the Lalo products. And then they're basically equivalent arrangements in most ITSs. And then the second one is, and this is a general idea across probably technology, but definitely educational technology, is you need the end users, you need the stakeholders involved at an early stage. And that's something the cognitive tutor folks have done every time. It's basically you go and work with the teachers and educators at the beginning, you get their feedback along the way, you iterate over with that feedback and change it to make it more of their own. And then the teachers involved love it. And so you don't just dump the technology in their laps and say, here you go. That doesn't work. And so the paper in the lower left-hand corner there, Intelligent Tutoring Goes to School in the Big City, was a major publication for the field because it makes that point of the critical role teachers have in this. It's really there to help them. So I'd like to, okay, yeah, the video's on the next one. So I'm going to shift to a new project now, and this is work from Neil Heffernan and his team and Christina Heffernan at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. I'm just going to play their video because it does a really nice job of showing you how this system works. And it's more about that inner loop help, but what you'll see here is just beautiful integration with teachers. And I'm going to say a few words. The video talks about a study that was run. I'm going to say a few more words about that. So here is the assessments presentation.
Every day, in classrooms and homes, students do their homework, and as they're working on the problems, they don't know if they're answering correctly or incorrectly. Teachers also don't know how well their students understood the homework. The next day, teachers begin the time-consuming process of going over homework. They give the answers, and some students check their work, while some do not pay attention. Then the teacher asks the students which problems they would like to see. Some students will raise their hand and ask for help, while others, even though they need the help, are too embarrassed to ask. Assessments, a free online service brought to you by Worcester Polytechnic Institute and others, has made it possible for students to receive immediate feedback so they don't make the same mistakes over and over again as they work on their homework. Teachers know immediately if the students are correct, incorrect, or didn't complete the assignment. When students arrive to class the next day, the teacher uses the information in the report to focus the review on the problems that the students need the most help with. To find out if using assessments improves learning, a study funded by the U.S. Department of Education was conducted by SRI, an objective research firm. To start, they recruited 44 schools. The research team made pairs of similar schools and then randomly divided the schools in each pair into two balanced groups. One group continued with their existing methods. The other schools used assessments for their homework, classwork, and skill practice. The differences in learning at the end of the year were dramatic. Learning was measured by a standardized test called Terra Nova, used by many schools across America. Terra Nova analysis reports that from the end of the 6th grade to the end of the 7th, the average U.S. student normally improves by 11 points. On the other hand, students using assessments had an average improvement of 20 points, almost doubling the amount students normally learn in a year. Policymakers know that they can lower class size, lengthen the school day, or lengthen the school year to get these sorts of gains. But these solutions are incredibly cost prohibitive. With assessments, there is only a small, one-time cost to train teachers, but the use of assessments is free. Immediate feedback to students and teachers using assessments improves learning. Go to www.assessments.org to learn more.
So that gives me goosebumps just thinking about what Neil's been able, and his students and colleagues have been able to achieve to get your work out into the world. It's a very difficult thing to do. Well, I'll share some of the numbers in a minute, but I remember when I first met Lewis, he was still at USC, but he was on his way out. He says, yeah, I'm having trouble changing the world from the university, and that's why he started Alelo. And we all really admired Lewis for that, and it's been a huge success, obviously. And so Neil is found another way to get, just slowly but surely has built up this incredible community of teachers, and word gets out, and it's free. It's that they do charge for the teacher training side of it, but it's not much at all. So anyway, I wanted to show you, they have now a very rich set of tools for teachers to link problems that are in the assessments database to the textbooks they use. So that's that upper left one there. What the video didn't cover is it also has tools that let the teachers create and share problems and recommend them to each other. And they actually have tools to help them give that inner loop help. That's one of the keys, is that's the assist in assessments. And then, of course, the assessment part of it is what you see on the right. Teachers get these reports from the homework from the night before. What they did in this study is very clever, is they looked at teachers who did it the traditional way, that would kind of open it up and say, all right, what do you want to talk about from last night's homework? And then they did the version where they got all of this inner loop feedback about how they're doing on the problems, what topics students were struggling with. And they found the teachers are more effective because they knew a lot more about the students in the class. So that's really, really powerful. It's really important. So Neil gave me some updated stats. They're working with 50,000 students a year, 12 million problems solved in their system. The study by Jeremy Rochelle was a very good study. And, I think, you can kind of scan the differences there, but my favorite one is that the teachers were really more in touch with where their students were. They could really plan more effectively. They could address the most pressing things that the whole class or most of the class might be struggling with. It's really profound. So there's a recent paper. Oh, that's Jeremy's paper, right? Okay, so that's kind of, as you look at that assessment output, I think, one way to view that is the AI-based approaches can actually provide better estimates of student learning. If you just look at right and wrong or percentages on exams, you're not getting very much. But these approaches get into like which misconceptions are most common and what problems were the hardest, what steps in those problems were the hardest. And so that's kind of AIED core argument 2 I'm sharing, is that we can really use these tools to better know the learners. And that means assess them persistently. So that gets into student models. And so this is what student modeling is. It's an estimate of what the learner knows at any given time, or how the learner feels, which I'll talk about shortly. But when you add a model of correct problem solving to what the student does, you can then compare those two, just basically iterate over that indefinitely. And you can then grow to have a representation of where that learner is, and that helps you decide when they've learned it, right, after so many iterations. So you can use that to plan make pedagogical choices. And then another intriguing idea is you can show that student, you can reveal that model to the student, say, this is what the system thinks you know. And I have a new poll question for you. And this is a general one, but I would like to know, and to Lewis, if you did answer yesterday, it won't let you answer again. Sorry about that. I could change that, I guess. But anyway, so if you could go back to Slido and let me know to what extent do you quantify your life? So, you can track a lot about yourself now. Diet, weight, exercise, steps you take, tons of people using Fitbits and so on. You can, actually, my watch tracks my heart rate 24 hours a day. I really enjoy looking at that data. So I'm curious if you do this. So if you could just answer one of those, from a lot to not at all. Looks like we've got pretty even distribution here. All right. So buried in those responses, you can see, okay, we're leaning towards less quantification in this audience, which is perfectly fine. So buried in those questions is the idea that when you look at that data, does it change your behavior? It sort of would be silly to track all your data but not adjust your behavior. It's kind of like the reason you track it in the first place is so you can make adjustments. And so that's sort of, let's take that idea and look at it in educational technology frame. And that takes us to the idea of open learner modeling. So if you are assessing students as they are using systems, this is the next step of you saying, okay, I want you to look now at your own performance. And these are three of the leaders in this field are listed above: Susan Bull, Judy Kay, and Vanya Dimitrova. And they have explored all sorts of visualizations of performance. And you can just see a few samples there. And the idea is students look at this and they use it to self-assess. So it's in this metacognition area of research where you think about your own learning and make adjustments to improve. One of the more interesting sort of parts of this is a student can challenge these student models, can say, no, I actually understand that topic better than you think I do. So give me some problems to solve and I'll prove it. And then they get to see, if you go back to the cognitive tutor from earlier, those progress bars, you can say, I am better at this, and it will help you get a full bar. So one of the funny stories Ken Kadinger likes to share is when they first put those in front of students, they were all, one-on-one with the computer, and they started looking at each other's progress bars and racing. So it's like it wasn't even built to be, or in the early days, there wasn't, the social aspects of it were not quite explored fully, but the students made it social. They made it a competition, and that changed a lot of what they did in the future, actually, to group work and explore other questions like that. So let me now shift from cognition, which most of that was, to emotions. There's also a large body of work in AIED that looks at assessing learner emotions. How can we, learning is very impacted by emotional state. And you can see on the left there, that's work by Sydney DeMello and Art Gracer. We move through a lot of different emotional states when we learn. We might feel great, we might be engaged and focused, or we might become confused. And if that sticks around long enough, we might shift into frustration, which can unfortunately take us to disengagement or being bored. This is not like a linear model. This is what the data reveals in their system that they used AutoTutor, that states the students go through with different task domains there. But the idea is if the system can know your emotional state, it can provide better support. If you are frustrated, you might need additional help. And Art and Sydney have worked out tutoring rules for a lot of these and evaluated them in the context of AutoTutor. Another example is on the right with pedagogical agents. So this system would have a pedagogical agent that would mirror this learner's emotions, and that was a way to feel empathy. And so the system could kind of say, yeah, I see you're kind of getting bored or you're getting frustrated, and so this pedagogical agent would help the student through those times. So very interesting work. And again, all in the space of trying to better understand the student and actually do things that there's no way a human tutor could get physiological data, for example, just by looking at their students, right? I mean, so this is giving teachers and educators access to things that just wouldn't be possible otherwise. So the last project in this category of providing support for teachers and assessing student progress and learning and emotions, all sorts of comes together in this very recent project back at CMU again. This is Ken Holstein's work with Vincent Laban, Bruce McLaren, and some others. And I'm just blown away by this. I just learned about this about a week ago, and I want to share it with you all because it really is powerful to think about what this tool could be for teachers. So I'll just play it.
Artificially intelligent learning software allows students to work at their own pace, while freeing up the teacher to move around the classroom and work one-on-one with students who need help the most. But in practice, the teacher is often left out of the loop in these classrooms, as the AI takes full control of the instruction. Although the software may be enough for many students much of the time, situations regularly arise that a human teacher is best suited to deal with. As artificial intelligence comes to the classroom, we see its role as enhancing human teachers' abilities, not replacing them. Working with K-12 math teachers, we've designed Lumilo, a pair of eyeglasses that tune teachers in to the real-time assessments that drive intelligent learning software. When a teacher glances around the room, Lumelo allows them to instantly see when students are currently struggling in software, doing well, or when they're unlikely to master certain skills without an intervention from the teacher. In addition, Lumelo lets teachers see when students have been idle for a while, or are currently misusing the software, abusing hints, or gaming the system. When a teacher gazes at a student's indicator, the system explains why this alert is showing. And when a teacher clicks on a student, a deep dive window appears, debriefing the teacher on what the student is currently working on, and the areas in which the student is struggling the most. After providing help, the teacher can set a reminder to check in again soon with the student, and can monitor whether the student improves over the next few minutes, or might need another intervention from the teacher. Teachers can also monitor summary of the whole classroom's performance to decide whether a class-level intervention, such as a mini lecture, might be in order. Glancing around the class over the next few minutes then becomes a fast way to sense whether or not the intervention worked.
So hopefully you're as impressed by that as I am. I mean, it hits home for me too. I have a teenager, and last year he was in Algebra 2, and I talked to him a lot about his class, and he says, yeah, we mainly work in small groups. The teacher will give many lessons, and then if he sees like a lot of people are struggling with something, he'll bring everybody back and they'll do a mini lecture. So, tools like that can make an already good pedagogical approach even better, and you actually see student progress as you walk around the room. I love that, and it brings together both modern technology and AR with that classic intelligent tutoring approach where you're in the weeds as students solve problems and you're translating it for the teacher. So the early evaluations of Lumelo have been great, and so I don't think I have the reference here though, but if you go to his website, here it is, yeah. kenholstein.com/teacher.ai. You can get, it won Best Paper at AIED 2018, just a couple months ago. So it's a great paper. That's kind of the third argument here. It's a little different than core argument 2, but I agree there's a connection. AI approaches can give us insights into behaviors. Not just education, but broadly, but especially in education, because we can model skilled task domains and know how far away a student is. That's kind of what student modeling is. But this is beyond that. This is how do they behave? What are their patterns? This is probably the best way to see this is to explore the field of educational data mining, which will probably be in one of the future seminars. I'm not a part of that community as much, so I'm going to talk about another idea of using behavior to get insights. I'm not, this is not an EDM project, not yet, but generally that's the goal of EDM, is to look for insights into behavior. Gaming behaviors is a common one. You saw in Lumelo, a student might have been abusing the hint system, so they're just trying to get the answers from the tutor rather than confront the hard deliberations necessary for learning. So what I'd like to do is, for this last part of the talk, I have a new poll question. And I'm going to shift gears and ask you a question about Minecraft. So the question is, which of the following statements about Minecraft is true for you? So either, all the way from I play myself, or, I have children to play, or I know friends who play, or I just know very little about it. I'm curious where everyone is with Minecraft. Good, thank you. Seeing some response. Okay, so we have a lot of, I've heard of it and have a basic understanding. A couple players, that's awesome. No children who play. You can check more than one too. Oh, well, maybe not after you've submitted. I don't know. Great. Okay, so that's good that everyone seems to have, nobody was in the bottom there of knowing very little. So good. So you hopefully you have a sense of what Minecraft is. It's essentially a simulation of the natural world, block-based, very, low res, but highly engaging. It's what's called a sandbox game. So you can go in and there's a lot of different ways to interact with this game. So I'm going to ask you another question here. This is actually my last poll question, so I'm done bothering you after this. I'm going to show you a picture, and what I'd like you to do is study the picture and tell me what it is you think this young man is learning. So this is a picture from a camper in one of our camps. I run Minecraft camps every summer, looking at things like astronomy, environmental science, chemistry, and Python programming. So anyway, I use Minecraft for all these because of the existing interest that so many kids have in it. The numbers are staggering of the kids who play Minecraft. Still, it's held up since 2015. It is still a top game. So second most selling in history, actually, second only to Tetris. But take a look at this picture. I know it's hard to see. You don't really need to see what's on the screen. I will tell you, though, at the bottom of his right monitor is a command, slash, it says MA, oh, it's small on my screen, too. I can't read it, but it is it's a command to spawn some creatures, and then he gives on the right side of that command line are coordinates. So he's typing in a really complex command there, just like some of us may have done in Unix 20 years ago, which blows my mind how fast and quickly they can. Well, anyway, I'm giving you a hint here. What do you think they're learning? And look around the picture a little bit. It's a fascinating picture, in my opinion. I see good coding, game making, script behaviors. Yeah. So great. So as I look at that picture, so I've spent some time at different companies. When I was at USC, we had my Institute for Creative Technologies. We had programmers all over that building. When I visited Alelo, I saw people working, just like this everywhere I go. And so he's got a monitor on the left with reference materials. So actually, if you zoom in on that, he's looking at the commands, the parameters you can use, and the optional parameters and what they do. And he had a goal. He wanted to achieve something. So he looked up that command, and he went over and he went to the command line in Minecraft and made it happen. And so I've been really, really excited when I see kids doing these things. And this is what programmers do. They look up reference material to achieve their goal, and they figure it out, and they might get it wrong, and they try again. On that command line, you can use up and down arrows to repeat earlier commands and change them, just like Unix works. It's just wonderful. So that's a skill. But if we think bigger and look at some of this other stuff going on, look how his hands are positioned. He's actually typing properly. He's drinking Diet Coke. 12-year-old. What programmer out there who doesn't drink Diet Coke, right? So it's just this makes me think when I watch kids, and it's something they want to do. They do it on their own time. So the question I'm asking is, how can we roll with that? How can we say, all right, you guys have chosen Minecraft. How can we figure out how you're using it, how we can mold it to achieve certain outcomes without ruining the game? That's a critical part of research like this. Don't want to turn it into something unpleasant. So the theoretical frame for this work I'm doing now is interest development. And so this is all the work of from decades and decades of research. And the latest, the best book for this is by Reniger and Heedy, that talks about the power of interest to motivate and engage people. And in education is often a focus area of their work, but it doesn't have to be education. This can capture interests, capture Lewis's interest in coffee perfectly. What triggered that interest at the beginning? How did he maintain it? So as you go through, if you think about this model, we're taking Minecraft and viewing it as a context for learning. So they already have that interest, maybe even well-developed interest in Minecraft. We want to say, well, what are the kind of the latent variables under that? What's driving that interest? Maybe there's an interest in animal science or agriculture. You build farms in Minecraft. It's one of the most common activities. Maybe mechanical engineering, if they do a lot of what's called redstone, where you're building electrical circuits and you're building machines and pistons, and there's just almost unlimited potential to do things like that in Minecraft. And so we want to use it as that place. One key thing of Reniger and Heedy's work is that in order for interest to sort of develop, kids, adults, anyone needs access to the resources. They have to have the opportunity to re-engage with that content. That's the actual you'll see that over and over in these papers, this opportunity to re-engage with content, and we're using Minecraft to be that opportunity. So the project I have, funded by NSF, is called What If Hypothetical Implementations in Minecraft, or WIMC. And we want to know two things. Well, broadly, how do these video games impact interest in STEM? So that's kind of the general, specifically Minecraft, because that's sort of the context for our work. So when kids play Minecraft, are they telling us things about STEM? And then can we mold it? Can we use Minecraft as a way to help cultivate that interest? And thankfully, there's already massive amounts of support out there. Microsoft actually made Minecraft Education Edition, so for schools with tools for teachers in it. So the reason this is relevant for this talk is because if we can better understand the existing interests of students and then help mold them towards these STEM domains, that's useful information for educators. If a museum, for example, I work with a couple of museums, if they could have, they're running a visiting camp students or a field trip or something, if they could know what those kids are doing, and what parts of science or technology they like, that could be very, very powerful. Just like those teachers and assessments who know of homework performance, educators who know about what kids already like, you can really build on an existing interest. So here's our approach. For this first research question of, okay, how is Minecraft relating or conveying interest? So are students giving us information when they play? What we've done is we've linked up Minecraft to this thing called the SIP taxonomy. So that stands for Classification of Instructional Programs, and it is a massive taxonomy of STEM domain, of all domains actually. I just pulled out the STEM stuff though. So you can see it has multiple levels and it connects up to all of these different fields. And so we wanted to ask, okay, how can we connect Minecraft to that? So what we've done is we've built we have a server built in a logger that tracks every single thing, almost every single thing. You can't get access to certain things, but we're working on it. And then we've mapped that into a Minecraft taxonomy that then we have in turn mapped into the SIP taxonomy. So it's sort of a multi-level approach, but basically what we want to know is if they go and build a bunch of machines, redstone machines in Minecraft, hey, maybe we could push them down the mechanical engineering track. Or if they like building farms, they do that over and over again, which kids will do. They repeat tasks constantly in Minecraft. Maybe they're agriculture, agronomy, or any of these, plant sciences areas. So this is a little glimpse of the tools we're using now, and we've developed these. There's not AI in this yet. There's nothing too magical about this, but we're working on that. We're working on plan recognition techniques for, is that kid building a house? Is the kid building a bridge? So we're working on that. What we have now are just kind of visualizations that help us see how kids are changing as they play. And so what areas of Minecraft are they going to? If we try to promote mechanical engineering, for example, will that influence how they go in and play next time? And so you're looking at a few pictures of us, visualizations that help us see how they spend their time. The most interesting ones on the right, that's the x-axis there is time for minutes. So this would be a 63-minute, probably can't see that, but a 63-minute session. And we can see as they play the game how they're kind of tickling different areas of STEM. So that the peak on the left is agriculture. So that meant they were doing things related to farming. And then if you go to the right side and you see that peak, that was geology. So they're probably connecting up with rocks or in the mountains or something on a Minecraft map. And so it's not saying this is definitely what they like. It's a suggestion, a guess as to what aspects of STEM were most relevant to how they played that day. And we can look at these patterns over time then and drill down. So you can see, if you click on any of these peaks, it will show you the parts that contributed to that estimate. So that's what we're working on. And that sort of data, the way to think about it is if you show this to teachers, you could get even better idea of what they have, what they like to do, and incoming sort of interests and so on. So I'll go ahead and finish up here with just a quick statement about AIED and what's next. Of course, we don't know, but we tried a couple years ago. I was with 3 colleagues. We edited a special issue of the AIED journal, It's actually part 2 of the journal. Part 1 was a reflection on the first 25 years. This part, we assembled authors who, and we asked them to think about where we're all going. What are we all going to be doing? And we had a very interesting collection of papers. Kind of, a couple of them are arguing, hey, learning is getting more complex. We need to confront it. We need to address this and use AI techniques to take care of it. And then some people were arguing, hey, we have all of these existing technologies and approaches that need more attention. And so personalization, collaboration, all of this stuff's been a focus point and needs to continue. A couple papers looked really closely at teachers, and one actually said we need to support teachers of lifelong learners. We can't just prepare teachers in college for an entire career of teaching. Now teachers have to change, and they have to be always learning, and that's so true. And one really cool paper in it was written as if it was the year 2041. So I'll just leave with that. And so I hope that these 3 messages came out. And my final comment is that all of this supports educators and students and parents. So that's important to think about as we move forward in AIED. So I think I've left some time for questions here. And thank you all for your time today.
Thanks, Ted. So if you have questions, you can type them into the chat window, and then I'll bring them up, and then we can discuss. And while people are thinking about questions, let me throw a question out, Ted. So, and this was highlighted in the assistance video, that students who are struggling, they are often afraid of being embarrassed by being shown that they are struggling. And with these new technologies that are constantly monitoring students, that could be potentially demotivating. So how are people avoiding the negative possible consequences of monitoring student state?
Gosh, I don't know how Ken or Vincent would answer that. But my guess is that, I almost view tutoring systems as a solution to that, because if you are stuck and a kid is maybe embarrassed to ask for help, the system might help them with no one knowing, right? Or maybe just the teacher knowing. So I think there's a way to look at that differently. And then maybe those shy children who don't want to ask their question out loud, maybe they would ask it to an intelligent tutor. I know there's examples of that back at ICT. They were doing some work with depression, and they've actually built virtual characters that you could talk to, and people were more forthcoming, more willing to talk to the virtual characters than real people because of the same issue, embarrassment and shyness and so on. So I don't know. I mean, it probably goes both ways. I think the other thing I would respond to you there is, how that is used, that only the teacher sees which students are struggling, right? I don't think that's broadcast on the front screen. So it's still sort of an intimate thing between the teacher and the student, right? Not a publicly broadcast, here are the struggling students. I think it's just the teacher that sees that.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Well, I guess that means that you gave a very clear presentation, Chad. Thanks.
Thank you, Lewis. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so we'll sign off now. We will post a recording shortly, and so if other people want to hear Chad's presentation, port them to the recording. It'll be available on YouTube as well. Thanks, everybody.